Hey yo, what's good, people? It's your boy reporting straight from the 90s. The 90s wasn't a part of the golden era for hip-hop only. It was the decade that cemented female R&B singers as global superstars. Before streaming, before viral moments, these women carry entire decades of culture with nothing but a microphone, a music video, and a sound that still echoes through playlists today. The 90s gave us a generation of singers who weren't just voices, they were blueprints. They defined style, inspired trends, and gave a soundtrack to everything from love and heartbreak to partying and survival. This was a real era, man. The 90s female R&B roster was deep, diverse, and dangerous. And the stars at the top weren't just competing, they were reshaping the entire industry. This wasn't background music, this was the soundtrack of an entire decade. So it's time to give them their flowers. Let's do it. By the time the 90s rolled around, Whitney Houston wasn't just a singer. She was already a living legend. The 80s had introduced her, but the 90s cemented her as a voice of a generation. She started the decade strong with I'm Your Baby Tonight in 1990, showing she could slide from pop ballads into hard-edged R&B production. But her true domination came in 92 when the Bodyguard soundtrack dropped.
Hey, Farmer, you want to come in here with me? Just to be safe?
That album became the best-selling soundtrack of all time, with over 45 million copies worldwide, and gave us the cultural earthquake that was I Will Always Love You. That song set at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 14 weeks straight, setting records and proving that Whitney's vocal power was untouchable.
To get into music business and to actually have mass appeal, for black artists, it's uncommon. You know what I mean? I didn't know it was gonna happen to me.
But she didn't stop there. Whitney kept running the charts with Waiting to Exhale in 1995. And that was an all-female R&B soundtrack that became a moment of its own. Her song Exhale debuted at #1, making her one of the few artists ever to pull that off in the 90s.
But there comes a point when you will exhale, yeah, say yeah.
She closed the decade with My Love Is Your Love in 1998, an album that proved she could adapt to the new hip-hop soul sound of the late 90s. Tracks like Heartbreak Hotel with Faith Evans and Kelly Price showed she was still ahead of the curve. You know, it's still hard to believe that she'd been gone for so long, but we haven't forgotten her. May she forever rest in peace. If Whitney was the gold standard, Mariah Carey was the only one standing eye to eye with her in the 90s. Bursting onto the scene in 1990 with her self-titled debut, Mariah came out of the gate with 5 straight #1 singles, a record-breaking introduction that instantly stamped her as the new powerhouse. But she didn't just survive the 90s, she owned it.
And this young lady, very impressive young talent. She wrote and helped produce her first album. She's making her national television debut. Her single is called Vision of Love. This is Mariah Carey. Give it up.
Her run of albums was ridiculous. Emotions, Music Box, and then Daydream, which gave us the forever anthem Fantasy, which was historic. And when she remixed it with Old Dirty Bastard, she opened the door for the R&B, pop, and hip-hop collaborations and shaped the future of music on a pop scale. Then came Butterfly in 97, arguably her most important 90s album. That's where Mariah shook off the pop princess label and fully leaned into R&B and hip-hop. Tracks like Honey and Breakdown with Bone Thugs and Harmony proved she wasn't afraid to move with the streets while she was still being the biggest pop star in the world. By the end of the decade, she had more #1 singles than any solo artist in history, male or female.
That's a lot of success in a very short time when you think about it. 80 million albums and the top-selling female recording artist. How's it feel?
It's very bizarre, actually.
Mariah in the 90s was a phenomenon. Her range, her pen, her ability to pivot between pop ballads and R&B bangers made her untouchable. While Whitney had the pipes, Mariah had the versatility. And together, they defined the female vocal landscape of the decade. And if Whitney and Mariah were the voices you couldn't escape on the radio, Mary J. Blige was the voice you felt in your chest. She didn't just sing R&B, she bled it, cried it, and lived it.
You and I
dropped her debut What's the 411 in 1992, produced by Puff, she carved out a brand new lane, hip-hop soul.
I was saying earlier that they were calling you the queen of hip-hop soul, and I said, well, yeah, the girl's talented, but she only has that one song out. But then, Real Love just exploded onto the charts, and it was like, oh, she's all that.
Mary's style was different. She wore the Timbs, the baggy jeans, the oversized jerseys, and she sang about pain, heartbreak, and resilience in a way that spoke directly to the streets. Songs like Real Love and Reminisce weren't polished pop. They were raw stories laid over hip-hop beats, and that authenticity made her a people's champion.
You came out, you totally revolutionized music for female singers. You think that it's because you signed with Uptown? Did that happen, or was this just all Mary J? Your whole sound and your whole delivery and your whole essence, girl, you bad.
By the time she dropped My Life in 1994, she wasn't just making hits, she was testifying. That album is often considered one of the greatest R&B albums of all time, and probably my favorite R&B album, I ain't gonna lie. The project was full of Mary pouring her struggles with depression, addiction, and toxic love right into the music. Fans connected because she didn't hide behind the glamour. She was vulnerable, flawed, and real.
What I don't like is that you read all the interviews and you done read 50 million interviews with the same thing in it, and you ask me the same question that are in the books. So you already know, but I gotta answer the same question all over and over again. I hate that.
The late 90s saw her evolve with Share My World in 97 and Mary in 1999, where she proved she could balance the pain with triumph. I Can Love You with Little Kim, 7 Days and All That I Can Say shared growth while keeping the signature edge. Mary J. Blige didn't need to be perfect. Her power came from honesty. She gave the 90s a soundtrack that felt like therapy sessions mixed with block parties, and that's why she's forever crowned the queen of hip-hop soul.
What's up, what's up? This is Beyonce on the red carpet with one of the hottest female artists out here, Miss Aaliyah.
By the mid-90s, R&B needed a fresh face, and that's when Aaliyah stepped onto the scene. She debuted in 1994 at just 15 years old with Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, produced by R. Kelly. The album introduced her as a cool, mysterious presence with baggy jeans, shades, and a sound that was smooth but streetwise.
We're here in Chicago, one of my favorite towns. Of course, y'all know I'm from Detroit. Originally New York, I was born in Brooklyn. So these are my three, spots: New York, Detroit, Chicago.
Songs like Back and Forth and her cover of At Your Best You Are Love proved she wasn't just a kid singer, she had star power. But it was her second album, One in a Million in 96, that flipped the whole game. With Timbaland and Missy Elliott behind the boards, Aaliyah became the face of futuristic R&B. Tracks like If Your Girl Only Knew and the title song One in a Million had beats and rhythms nobody had ever heard in R&B before. She was ahead of her time, making music that set the blueprint for the next decade.
If your girl only knew that you was trying to get with me.
Her image was just as impeccable. She wasn't trying to be a glamorous diva. Aaliyah made tomboy style cool, mixing streetwear with a sleek, mysterious vibe that young fans could relate to. By the time she closed out the decade with the Romeo Must Die soundtrack in 2000, she had already shifted into being not just a singer, but a cultural icon in fashion, film, and sound. Aaliyah gave the 90s something different. She wasn't about overpowering vocals or flashy performances. Her magic was in being effortlessly cool, forward-thinking, and confident. She was the princess of R&B, and her influence is still all over music and fashion today. May she rest in peace.
Here she is right now to sing the #1 song in the country, Brandy!
If Aaliyah was the mysterious cool girl, then Brandy was the girl next door with a voice that could stop time. She dropped her self-titled debut in 1994 at just 15 years old, and tracks like I Wanna Be Down and Baby had made her one of the youngest stars to dominate R&B. What set her apart wasn't just her success, it was her voice, Brandy's tone, her phrasing, and her intricate harmonies earned her the nickname The Vocal Bible. But Brandy wasn't only running the music charts, she was everywhere in the 90s, acting on hit sitcoms like Moesha, starring in Disney's Cinderella in 97 as the first black actress to play the role, and even branching into movies like I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. She wasn't just a singer, she was a full-on cultural force. Musically, she leveled up with her second album, Never Say Never. That album gave us the duet with Monica, The Boy Is Mine, which sat at #1 for 13 straight weeks and became the most iconic R&B rivalry of the decade. The song was bigger than music. It was a pop culture moment that had fans debating who really owned the crown. Beyond that, tracks like Have You Ever and Almost Doesn't Count showed her versatility, moving from radio-friendly bops to heartfelt ballads.
Almost made you love me, almost made you cry, almost made you happy, baby. Didn't I?
Brandy's influence was huge. She was young, stylish, relatable, and a role model for black girls who saw her on TV and heard her on the radio. By the end of the decade, she wasn't just a teen star anymore. She was solidified as one of R&B's defining voices, bridging the gap between youthful pop appeal and serious vocal artistry. If Brandy was the polished girl next door, then you already know Monica was the no-nonsense young star who came in just as early but had a sharper edge.
I didn't know what the perception of Miss Thing was going to be, but I knew I was going to stay true to myself, like some artists don't.
She dropped her debut album, Miss Thing, in 1995 at 14 years old, making her one of the youngest artists ever to score back-to-back Billboard #1s. Songs like Don't Take It Personal and Before You Walk Out of My Life weren't just teen hits. They resonated across all ages because her voice had a maturity way beyond her years. What separated Monica from her peers was her power. While Brandy's voice was smooth and layered, Monica's was straight-up church-trained strength. She could belt, she could bend notes, and she always sang with the raw conviction that made every simple hook sound like a testimony. Big moment came in 1998 with her second album, The Boy Is Mine. But Monica wasn't riding Brandy's wave. The album gave us classics like Angel of Mine and The First Night, both of which hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. By the end of the 90s, Monica had carved out her spot as one of R&B's most consistent young stars. She didn't have the same Hollywood crossover as Brandy, but her voice and her catalog gave her a reputation as one of the most authentic singers of her generation. Monica brought grit, church, and attitude to the teen R&B scene, and fans loved her for it. In a decade full of powerhouse voices, Toni Braxton carved her own lane with a sound that was unmistakable, deep, sultry, and emotional. She started the 90s as a breakout star on the Boomerang soundtrack, but by the time her self-titled debut dropped in 1993, she was already a Grammy-winning artist. That debut sold over 10 million copies worldwide and gave us timeless ballads like Another Sad Love Song and Breathe Again. But Toni's true takeover came with her second album, Secrets, in 1996. The record delivered her signature song, Unbreak My Heart, written by Diane Warren. It spent 11 consecutive weeks at #1 and became one of the best-selling singles of all time. With her signature voice, Toni made Heartbreak sound luxurious. Her voice had the kind of richness and control that turned pain into something cinematic.
Without you, I just can't go.
Toni wasn't just about the vocals though. Her style was just as impactful. Short hair, bold fashion choices, and a sophisticated image made her sound stand out in an era where a lot of the singers leaned heavily into youthful or flashy looks. Toni embodied elegance, giving the 90s R&B scene a mature balance. By the end of the decade, even through label disputes and financial struggles, Toni Braxton was already cemented as one of R&B's most distinctive voices. While others chased runs and high notes, Toni Braxton slowed it down and gave you depth. In the 90s, if Heartbreak had a sound, it was Toni Braxton's voice, period. Closing out the decade, no artist hit the culture quite like Lauryn Hill. She had already made noise as the standout voice of the Fugees with their album in 1996, The Score, and it became one of the best-selling hip-hop albums of all time, Tracks like Killing Me Softly showed Lauryn could flip a classic into something fresh, bridging hip-hop, reggae, and R&B all in one shot. But 1998 was the moment. That's when she dropped her solo debut, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and the world stopped.
You know, when I thought I was my most wise, really not wise at all. And in my humility, you know, and in those places that most people wouldn't expect a lesson to come from, that's where I learned so much. And, you know, and so I termed the phrase miseducation.
The album wasn't just music, it was a movement. Lauryn combined R&B, hip-hop, gospel, and neo-soul in a way nobody had done before. Songs like Doo-Wop, That Thing, X Factor, and Everything Is Everything wasn't just hits. They were statements about love, womanhood, and self-worth.
I mean, I have gifts, but these are things that all come from God and through me. Everything that is out there, everything that I'm privy to, you know, so are you.
The impact was massive. The Miseducation sold over 10 million copies in the US, and it won 5 Grammys in 1999, and solidified Lauryn as one of the most important voices of her generation. In a decade filled with legends, Lauryn Hill stood out because she brought substance, style, and soul into one flawless package. Lauryn didn't just close the chapter on 90s R&B, she elevated it into something timeless. Even with just one official solo album, her influence stretched way beyond the decade. To this day, artists still chase the blueprint that was laid in 1998. And it's a wrap, y'all. The 1990s gave us a lineup of female R&B singers who didn't just dominate, they defined the era. From Whitney and Mariah's global domination, to Mary's raw honesty, to Aaliyah's futuristic cool, Brandy and Monica's teen reign, Tony's elegant heartbreak, and Lauryn's one-of-one masterpiece, the 90s was an R&B renaissance. If you grew up on these voices, you know the feeling. And if you didn't, go press play and find out why the 90s is still the decade everybody keeps coming back to. If you want more of the story, stay tuned for part 2, where we shine a light on the underrated voices, the niche queens, and the people's champs who carry just as much weight in shaping 90s R&B. We're gonna give them their flowers too. Until then, we out, y'all.